Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming, and we'll have a few folks come in, I'm sure, as we launch into this. But we're really excited to have a joint webinar this depending on your time zone this afternoon or this evening with Life Stories in the Center for Civic Education. We'll do a little bit of sharing about ourselves, but really appreciate you taking the time to spend it with us. And we'll record this webinar and be able to post it on our website and share it widely for use after the fact. But we're here today to really talk about the power of storytelling and civic learning and how you can use digital media to deepen student engagement. And so we'll share some of the programs and ways that we do that at the Center for Civic Education here first. Um, and then we'll launch into a section on with life stories, and they've got a whole host of media that they can share with us that can help support students in their research on constitutional questions. So here are some of our objectives for today. We're going to explore the use of digital media and how it can spark engagement and deeper learning. We are going to analyze different questions, a number of different kind of cases for questions, mainly through the We the People program. So we run, which I'll explain a little bit about, the We the People program and the questions in our text and the constitutional questions that we release for our competition hearings. And then we'll take a look at analyzing different perspectives through that media that Fran and Life Stories will be able to share with us, all in the hopes of inspiring engagement. So we'll jump into some introductions. We'll do, again, like I said, we'll do an overview. We'll do a little bit into the power of storytelling. I'll share about We the People, and then how to use digital media to guide research. And Fran's got a whole bunch of, like I said, great resources to share. So a little bit about me. My name's Michael Blau. I am getting over a cold, as you might be able to tell, so my voice is going in and out. Apologies. I work for the Center for Civic Education. One of the most important things about me, though, is I'm an alum of one of our programs, We the People, which I'll talk a lot about today, as are almost 50 million students in America since 1987. And I now work for the Center on Civic Learning Projects and Partnerships. And here with me today to share from Life Stories is Fran. Fran, go ahead and
Yeah,
introduce
thanks,
yourself.
Michael. I'm Fran Sterling. I'm Director of Education for Life Stories, and I'm coming from you from Denver, Colorado. I'll be sharing a little bit more about Life Stories in a minute, but I am not a student alum, but I am a twice parent alum of We the People. So I'm a huge, um, a huge ambassador for this program in terms of engaging students in civic education, and I'll share more about that in a bit.
Great. Yeah, Fran actually connected with the center, or reconnected, I guess, with the center after national finals, I believe, last year. We've been hoping to pull something together to give as an offering to civic educators for almost a year now, right? And we're excited for this to take off and connect these two organizations. And like Fran said, she knows the power of our programs because her daughters have done it, and that's really meaningful. And she'll be able to share all about herself and life stories as we get into it. First, I did want to just share at the top here, just super briefly, the center's mission, and it is to promote an enlightened and responsible citizenry committed to democratic principles, actively engaged in the practice of democracy. And that's what we try to do through two flagship programs. The one is what we're going to really have time to spend time digging into today, which is We the People, the Citizen of the Constitution, which is both a textbook and a program, what should I say, experiential learning program through simulated congressional hearings, which I'll share all about in just a second here. But who are you? We want to know. So if you can go ahead and put it into the chat, please go ahead and drop your name, where you're calling in from. I should have said I'm calling in from a chilly Wisconsin. It's not that chilly today in Wisconsin. It's almost 50 degrees. So actually, it's a warmer day for us. But where are you calling in from? What grade level do you teach if you're a teacher? If not, what role do you have? and put that in the chat so we can get a sense of who's here. So as you type away, like Kermit here, few reminders for the Zoom call. Many of you are professionals at this now, but we wanted to feel free to come off mute and be able to share that anything you have as it comes to mind. I do want to jump right into this rather simple question, but what compelling question for our conversation here today. And I apologize, I can't see the chat, but because I'm sharing my screen. But we have some folks, from Chicago,
It's
from
like you got Richmond,
Virginia.
Virginia. Yeah, you got Virginia. We have
Great,
Connecticut, and we have another Chicago. So,
great.
yeah,
Oh, filmmaking, photography, and
Virgin,
digital art. Wonderful. From
Virgin
Connecticut.
Islands.
Virgin Islands, love to
You
see
in the
you. Thanks for
rose. You
being
in?
here.
That's great.
Fantastic. Um, Well, fantastic. And feel free to continue to use the chat. And obviously, we're an intimate group here, so you can come off mute, as I said, anytime. But I can't see the chat as well. But Emily, my colleague here, who's also working for the center, I should say, Emily Voss, has helps coordinate or manage our national programs for We the People and Project Citizen. She is answering things in the chat, and she'll put in some helpful links. Calling in from Charlottesville, Virginia. All right, so here's one of the compelling questions that's bringing us here today, which I want you to keep in mind, is how do you bring civic education to life in order to foster deeper knowledge and transformational engagement? And so we're going to keep that in mind. Keep in mind our topic of storytelling and how it can feed into this the a deeper understanding of constitutional government, democracy, and engagement in democracy. Um, but I'm going to launch into a short See, Think, Wonder activity. If some of you are familiar with this, just three simple questions that will waterfall in the chat. Might as well just do it in the chat. But I'm going to show you a quick clip just to get us rolling in as an introduction to one of our programs, again, called We the People, the Citizen, and the Constitution. So we have a clip here. I'll stop sharing my screen, where is from a recent documentary that came out this fall called Citizen Nation. And you feel free, any raised hands, have you seen Citizen Nation on PBS? It was on PBS every Tuesday in October of this year. And it featured students participating in the We the People competition, which Fran's daughters were a part of, and on their journey to the national finals. And Emily's put that link into the chat. So I want to show you this quick clip. And all I want you to do is enter into the chat right now as you watch this clip. What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? And this is a quick 60-second clip.
I didn't know that much about the Constitution. I was very anti-Constitution. I had a pretty negative view of it because I'm like, why are we listening to all these old men that lived in the 1700s? But as I grew more engrossed in the history of it, I realized that some of the ideals were very beautiful. Fundamental principles of the Constitution and a constant adherence to those: piety, justice, moderation, temperance, industry, and frugality. You can clearly tell that John Adams wrote it. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where when you can tell just by the style of writing, it's like, oh, my heart. Yeah.
All right, that's my clip. So go ahead and put it in the chat first. What do you, and just to bury the lead here, we're trying to get, what happened to this poor girl that thought that the Constitution was irrelevant and the thoughts of old men in the 1700s didn't matter, to suddenly she's swooning over the words of John Adams from three almost 300 years ago. What happened? What do you see? What do you think? What do you wonder? Fran sees a young student. Yeah. Transformation. Love that word. Annie, thank you. Students engaging in primary sources. Passion, engagement. I'll be honest with you, as someone that went through this program, um, if I have a hard time watching that clip and not getting choked up. I wonder what sparked a love for her. Hope, you see. What factors prompted her transformation? That's what you're wondering. That's a good wondering, right? I want to know that too. Excellent. Feel free to continue to put in these. What do you see from that clip? What do you think? What do you think? What do you wonder? You can feel free to put those into the chat. But I love this, some of these points on passion, engagement, transformation, hope. How did this happen to this young girl? And this is something that we've tried to do. I've seen it myself. Fran has seen it in her daughters. We've tried to do for the Center for Civic Education is make this hope, make this transformation and passion and engagement through experiential learning. And we do that through deep constitutional knowledge and constitutional questions through two programs. And again, I'm going to focus on just one, We the People, here today. And We the People is our flagship program that as I said, we've been running since 1987 as a celebration of the bicentennial of the Constitution in 1987. We also do this through having a national network of teachers. Emily and I were just speaking before we got on about our national finals, which is again what the students from each state around the country, the state champions, go to Washington, D.C., as these students here you see a picture of, to compete to test their constitutional knowledge in a simulated congressional hearing. And so wonderful that there's continue to feel free to use the chat. But what is a simulated congressional hearing? And Fran's going to help us support how students might prepare for a simulated congressional hearing by the use of media, storytelling, and digital assets. But so at the basic level, what we have for the center for our program is a textbook. It's a wonderful textbook. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it today, but it's broken up into 6 units. And students essentially become experts on one of those units in different unit teams. As you see up here on the screen, students are on unit teams as a group of 3 to 7 and a group of judges on the other side of the table, just like you would see on C-SPAN in a congressional hearing. And the hearing allows students to apply their knowledge to constitutional and civic principles in a real-world context. So how do students prepare for this? So, like I said, usually our teacher will divide up their class into groups of 3 to 6 students. Each one is assigned a multi-part question based on one of the units of our textbook. So it may be on the philosophical foundations of democracy, Unit 1, and they'll have to talk about the Enlightenment in answering one of those questions, for example. Each group works collaboratively to prepare a written response. They have 4 minutes to give a written response, just like you would if you were testifying in front of Congress. And then you have a Q&A, timed Q&A with the judges, a conversation with the judges to plumb the depths of everything that you know about that topic after that written response. So, and the activity can be modified in a number of different ways. We also run this simulated congressional hearings with middle school students. Howard County does it with thousands of 5th grade students every year. Most of the instances that you'll see here today and the questions are for high schoolers, but that's in no way limited to the number of different variations you can change the simulated hearing. So what does it involve? So again, we're big into the 5E model for engagement. 5Es being engaging with students, exploring. Students dive into primary sources, which we'll talk a lot about today. explaining themselves, students articulating understandings at a really high level. If you watch Citizen Nation, you'll definitely believe that, know that. Elaborate, students deepen their learning by applying knowledge in complex scenarios. Again, judges often do that in the Q&A during a simulated hearing and evaluating. And so these are the kind of the core components. And just to give you a sense of things, Fran's also going to share a bunch of these as well. But here's a sample question for Unit 6 that you might be timely right now. This is on national citizenship, which is actually from a question from a number of years ago, though it's definitely pertinent right now. But as you can see, it's a multi-part question. That's how students are able to write so much on it and be able to spend so much time digging into it, and hence the need to be able to do research and have lots of different tools to do that research on this question, both for their written response and so that they're ready for any kind of question the judge, a panel might ask them about it. So as you can see, I won't read the whole thing here, but this one has a lot to do with citizenship, naturalization, birthright citizenship in particular, and the various different perspectives, not just one side or two sides, but multiple perspectives that students can bring to bear in their response to this type of a deep question. So, using a question like this, where do you see opportunities to engage students in primary sources, both digital and traditional kind of primary sources? I'll put this in the chat. Feel free to come off mute. Feel free to come off mute. And say if you're looking at this question, I'll keep sharing my screen here. But if you're looking at this question, where do you see opportunities to pull in research work with primary sources or digital media? Feel free to use the chat as well. Yes.
I mean, I think pretty obviously in the news at the moment, right? I just got finished teaching this with my students, and looking at this in historical context, but also looking at this obviously in the challenge to the 14th Amendment currently.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So a primary source might be an executive order, right? Like
Right.
from this month. But also I heard you say the 14th Amendment, obviously, right? Would be a great place to engage with that primary source in a traditional way. What other ideas? Great, thank you. Any other ideas? Well, I won't linger here too long because Fran's going to give you other ideas about how digital media and interviews, first-person accounts, can also be pulled into giving students background knowledge in citizenship, birthright citizenship, case law, executive orders, 14th Amendment, all of that good stuff. So keep thinking about that as I take a look at this, and I'm going to actually just do a very quick explore activity with you all on the rubric for the simulated congressional hearings. But just to jump ahead to the types of components that students need to get to in order to answer this question. And yes, feel free to continue to use the chat. Annie is talking about the digital humanities tools. Yes, to explore primary sources. Wonderful. Yeah, oral histories. There's a number of different archives on things like that as well. Wonderful. And yes, obviously his firsthand accounts from the 1860s are all great. But take a look at the components for how the students are evaluated in simulated congressional hearings. You'll see a number of different components. A couple of these are really important and that some of you are already naming, but trying to get to evidence and analysis of current events, how past precedents, 14th Amendment, for example, and giving particular points of evidence can be analyzed and applied to modern day components. Those are all different components of the evaluation and scoring for students in simulated congressional hearings. And it doesn't have to be scored. There's points here, but there's a lot of different ways to do this. But these kind of criteria are important, and we have them in our rubric. So I will actually go ahead and make sure I copy this and put it in the chat. Here is the high school level rubric. I put it in the chat just now. And just to jump ahead as well, I want to make sure that you have access to our actually newly updated and beautiful simulated hearings webpage. Um, and I do want to give you a chance to explore. So even just very briefly, before we hand over things to Fran on how digital media can help students prepare for dealing with rich constitutional questions like we do in We the People, just go ahead and take a look at the rubric. Go ahead and open that up, and go ahead and open up the second link I put in on the hearings and explore. Just literally take. I'm looking at the clock here. Take 90 seconds to turn your camera off. Go ahead, open up both of these links, and what ideas, and as you look, be thinking about as you explore, what ideas are you taking away and how you might be how these this type of approach to constitutional questions might reach reach you, and you might implement them into your teaching practice, and how they might apply digital resources and primary sources. So I'll go ahead and as you explore, I'll put in the question in the chat. So feel free, take 90 seconds, look at both of these links. I'll put the explore question in the chat. Go ahead and come on back. If you went off camera, you want to come back on camera, that'd be great. And feel free to share out as you just poked around really briefly at taking a look at the rubric and the different components of that rubric, taking a look at the congressional hearing resources. What key insights or ideas do you have for incorporating primary sources and digital media into exploring these programs?
Good evening.
Hi there.
Hi, I am Michael Rose. I am from the U.S. Virgin Islands, and we currently do not have these types of competitions. So I was just thinking that maybe the more experienced students can, just like how you do pen pals, even though that's a long time ago thing, can mentor or work with across with novice students, and like go through the research, do the with the different types of resources, and so that way they could be able to then have like mock hearings and like use the rubrics and so forth, so that they can also have that experience as well.
Great. Thank you. And just to say it, and well, one, I remember seeing the Virgin Islands at the national competition when I was in high school. So we used to have, the territories used to go to national finals. So it's not off the table, though. It is hard. It's hard. The travel is hard. I know. But I do want to mention, you don't have to be necessarily have a coordinating entity to do a simulated congressional hearing in your classroom. You could always utilize these questions and do it just with your students in your class. And the judges could always be other social studies teachers or knowledgeable members of your community that you've pulled in. So there's a lot of different ways to do one. How about one more idea or insight?
I think I've been involved in Model UN, and I've been involved in Model Congress, and I never thought about doing a mock constitution, not constitution, but
Congressional hearing.
congressional hearing.
Yeah.
One problem would be it's very difficult to bring people outside into school these days. And so I would have, and it's very difficult to get teachers who have enough time to do this. So it would have to build in some sort of way in which students can peer evaluate one another, which has layers of
Preparation. Yeah.
But in my civics class, students identify a civic problem at the beginning of the year that they continue to build their knowledge on throughout the entire year. So for every unit, whether it's about public policy or media literacy or elections, whatever it is, they're building their knowledge on this particular civic problem and how they would focus on that problem. And so I think I would have them look at this from that angle. So yeah, I think I'd bring that in here. During the public policy, most of it focuses on the Constitution as public policy. And so I think during that unit, I could probably have them do something like this at the end as their summative assignment. Yeah, I think it could work. But again, there are those problems with evaluation. I also don't understand your rubric, because it seems like your rubric is a rubric of assessing the merit of the assignment itself as much as it is like what students are doing. Like, not until you get kind of to the end is it really sort of, does it feel like it's very meaningful criteria for how I would teach it. So I think I might rework the rubric somewhat, but just so that it would fit what I'm doing. I'm sure it would work in other contexts, but yeah. I think I could do this.
Yeah. But you could certainly, the rubric is geared towards, for the most part, is hopefully able to be used by just classroom assessment and evaluation. But it is geared towards most tangibly the competition component. I mean, that's great to explore with playing with what you might change to meet the needs of your context. And definitely, I would always say, it is a different layer of work, but it is always wonderful. And you're always surprised to find how many people want to help judge a competition like this. The bar associations, your local leadership are always itching. Judge associations, those kinds of things are always interested in engaging and going into schools. So it is an added piece, but it's a wonderful experiential component.
In Chicago Public Schools, though, it's just a very laborious legal process to get people to be able to be inside the school. Like, it's incredible. Even if they're like contracted to come and do work, it's just, there's a lot of background searches, and it takes a lot of time, and a lot of people just aren't really willing to go through all that.
Yeah, we can connect you with our state coordinator, Dee, who does she does do the programs in Chicago, and so I'm happy to connect after this, and we can dive in and troubleshoot. If you have ideas or need questions, I can definitely connect you with our state coordinator there.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I don't want to take up too much more time, because I know Fran's got so many resources that she wants to share with us, and she's going to help answer this question of how you can incorporate resources to get at some of these deep constitutional questions. So I will hand it over to Fran.
Great. Thanks, Michael. So let me share my screen. Make sure everybody's seeing this. Please give me a notice if you cannot see it. Everybody good? And hopefully you're seeing four beautiful faces where this is the homepage of our website. So as Michael introduced me, I'm Fran Sterling. I'm Director of Education for Life Stories. And we are an education nonprofit that creates and distributes documentary films and educational resources, obviously about people whose lives inspire meaningful change. I am a 30-plus year educator myself. I was a social studies, history, civics teacher for over a decade. I worked for Facing History and Ourselves for over 15 years. And I've been working in social issue documentaries and curriculum development for social issue films for about 10 years now. And so looking at how this overlays with the content that the Center for Civic Education does is just a really natural fit. And I'm really just delighted to be here. And thank you, Emily and Michael, for inviting me here. So Life Stories has been around since 2017 as a nonprofit. So the filmmakers, though, have been making films for over 30 years. And the films that we're going to look at today and the interviews really come from 2017 on. So you can find us at lifestories.org. And really what prompted, of course, sort of the parent hat, but what I am deeply committed to the power of storytelling and how it can emotionally engage, intellectually engage, and really move people in ways in terms of developing empathy, multiple perspective taking, a lot of the civic virtues that we all aim for our democracy. But really, these 5 bullets are how I see the work that we do at Life Stories in creating films, creating an archive of interviews, developing educational resources, really, like I said, overlay with the center's work. So I hope in our time today, I'm going to be sharing a couple of interviews, clips, a couple of film clips, and we're going to engage a little bit in conversation. But really, my hope is that this is not even the tip of the iceberg. This is barely the sprinkle on top of a sundae of what we have available. All of our resources, our media resources are free and available for educators. We post everything on YouTube and YouTube Shorts. We also have social, and so everything is available. We also have transcripts for everything that we create. So we see these as another layer of primary sources. I know somebody mentioned media literacy. That is a big part of what we do is critical media literacy with our work. So delighted to have that in the mix as well. So we're going to dive right in. This is just a sample of 10 of the documentaries that we're going to look at a little bit today, not all of them. Of course, we're going to dabble at about 5 of them. But all of these, as I mentioned, are on our website. And you can request education screenings for free, or some of them are actually available to fully stream online. And I'm just going to click on this crosswalk document here. We'll certainly add this to the resources, but what I did just for this webinar, and I know it's small, but we'll do it as a follow-up. What I did is I looked at Project Citizen, which is the middle school work that the center does, the We the People textbook that Michael mentioned earlier with the different units, and I just did um, um, a top layer of aligning some of the documentary films that we have with the questions. How does the First Amendment, I'm looking at Unit 5 here, how does the First Amendment protect freedom to assemble, petition, associate? King in the Wilderness is an award-winning documentary film that we have. And here are 3 lessons of that. So as an educator, this is just a really quick roadmap for you to look at some of these questions that are the foundation of the We the People textbook. I didn't do the congressional hearing questions because they change every year, but I think this is a great place to start in looking at that. So that's available for you to use at any time. And so just wanted to introduce that idea. And so now we're going to dig into some of the media because I think that's a reason why a lot of you are here. And then, as I said, I'm a huge lover of documentary films. And so what I want us to look at as we watch some of these, I'm going to show a few, and then we're going to stop and pause and chat a little bit. And then I'm going to show a few more, and then we're going to have a closing thing. But really, these 3 questions are ones that I hope both you can see how you could integrate them into your classroom. You can use them for not only civics and US history, but also media literacy work. If you have social emotional learning goals that you're looking for, some of this around relationship and how do students see themselves and other people's stories, that can kind of combine with this as well. So these are just 3 questions that I want you to think about as we watch some of these. So how do they engage and inform you differently than maybe a document? What are the civic connections or relationships can you identify? And really, what new questions arise from these segments? So the first segment, this question is actually from the We the People textbook, lesson 34, right? What is the importance of civic engagement to American constitutional democracy? We're going to look at Sherilyn Ifill, who was the lead executive director for the Legal Defense Fund, and now she's a professor at Howard University. And so I'm going to do this. I have it queued up. And so we're going to look at her clip and then come back and engage. And please tell me if you can't hear this, but I think I checked all the right boxes.
You know, we talk about this when I was a little kid. We had the bicentennial, 1776. It was so exciting. I've got the coin somewhere in my house. And, you know, it was like we were this 200-year-old country and now 250-year-old country. And we talk about ourselves in these terms. I don't think of us that way. I think of us as a 65-year-old country because I don't see us as being a true democracy until Brown versus Board of Education is decided. And I could go a step further and even take it to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, since most black people in the South really could not exercise the right to vote until after 1965, which means we could not have been a democracy because we deliberately denied the franchise to a set of people who were enfranchised in our Constitution. If you begin to think about this country that way, it means we are a very young country, and we behave like one. We are like teenagers. We have temper tantrums, and we have mood swings. We haven't been at this very long at all. So how could Trump follow President Obama? Because we haven't been at this very long. And we continue to have mood swings, and this idea of us as a multiracial democracy hasn't fully set yet. It's early days yet for this country in terms of thinking about equality. And we've been trying to expand it, and we have been expanding it. You know, the civil rights movement, which was largely focused on equality for African Americans, is now understood to encompass, you know, Latinos, stood to encompass women, and was part of the undergirding of the women's movement. We understand that it now encompasses members of the LGBTQ community. We understand all of that, but it's thin. It's not deep. It takes time to put down deep roots. And we're not there yet. Knowing that means we have to behave differently in our democracy. It means we can't sit out elections. It means we can't just vote for people and then not show up to hold them accountable. It means we can't think that government is something other people do, and yet we don't encourage, you know, we don't encourage our kids to run for office. What's wrong with being on the school board? It's a part-time job, you know, you can do it. We have to behave differently. We can't behave as though our democracy is some unshakable thing that's been around for hundreds of years and can't be toppled. It isn't. It's new, particularly where race is concerned. Our progress is very new, and the roots haven't fully caught yet. And if we're not careful, it can be unearthed.
Get this to stop here.
What we're to get out of this is we've been faced with the stark reality that we perhaps
That
would
is
have
our
been.
first clip from Sherilyn Eiffel. And in chat real quick, I'd love to have you think about what you saw, what you heard from her, and perhaps a question that arose from her 3-minute reflection on the youth of our democracy. And I'm trying to figure out how I can see the chat, but I don't think I can. Michael, can you help me out here in terms of what's anything that?
Yes.
Great.
I
I see Annie
can
has
see.
raised her hand.
Yes.
Can you hear me okay, Michael?
Yep.
So at the American Historical Association conference earlier this year, there was a session, and it included Ann Holton from Virginia, because I know we have some Virginians here. It included a Virginia Tech professor who ran for his local school board. It included a 20, not even 30, mid to late 20-year-old social studies K-12 supervisor who ran and got elected to his local school board. There's another person there who's the director of National Council for History Ed, but she serves on her local school board. And they were all on a panel together. And in this clip you shared, when she said, we don't raise kids to think about serving on like school boards and city councils. And I do think that is something that is slowly slipping away from, and we don't look at local and state elections have a much more direct impact on our students today than anything happening at the national level, because that is the boots on the ground who decides what does and doesn't get taught in our local schools. So when she said that, it just made me think of that panel and
Yeah.
how powerful it was.
Well, that's
Mm.
thank you for that. I mean, I think that you immediately made that relationship connection to something that you saw to a story that she was telling. And I think that sometimes can be the power of when you use media. It can transport you to those moments in ways differently than maybe a document. And I love documents, so don't get me wrong. I need to have a little bit of both. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to say something or share anything that came up for them? How did the connections that they made to what she was saying? Any new questions that arose?
Well, I thought it was really interesting how she defined um, democracy in terms of its age in America.
Mm,
Was definitely a really different perspective when, how she laid it out, and to
mhm,
help you to start thinking a lot deeper what
mm.
that really means.
And how would you think your students might react to that in the same way?
I really do think so, because because especially that they would relate to it in a sense how she makes the analogy about being a teenager.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Great, and that's just a 3-minute clip. And this comes, as you see on the slide. This is an interview that was created in the making of a 3-part documentary called Obama Towards a More Perfect Union that was on HBO. It was a 3-part documentary, and so many of the interviews that we do, we have like a 3-hour interview with Sherilyn Ifill, and we use maybe 5 minutes of her interview in the film. So what we have made available through our interview archive is the full interview for students to use and educators to use however they want to reinforce ideas or to build connections and relationships. So thank you for engaging. Is there anything else that's anybody want to say before I move on? I have like 7 other clips I want to share, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do it.
I want to say just quickly, I think this is a really important clip, and I can use this in many ways. And I think this is the kind of key to getting kids engaged in the Constitution, because it's not to go back and say, let's worship this old document, right? That disenfranchised people who may have disenfranchised people who look like you, but to say, this is the project that you're engaged in. It's a project that you're engaged in today. And now you can go back and find the power in the Constitution that's in it for you today, not in a sort of sort of reverential treatment of the founding of the people who created it, but in full light of their incredible like what was really remiss in their efforts, right? So to go back and claim the power that's in it, not to go back and sort of like worship it as some sort of,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's how I would really lose my students. So.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to move us forward because this is like the 30,000 foot idea, right? What is the importance of civic engagement? And when we move forward, um, um, we brought up a similar one. This is, and I'm going to show just a portion of this clip. This goes into more of the national finals question for the competition, but somebody had brought up about the 14th Amendment. I thought, oh, perfect. We have a clip about the 14th Amendment, but really this is looking at citizenship and the relationship between the 14th Amendment citizenship clause and how courts have shaped its interpretation over time, especially regarding birthright citizenship. So these are students that are going to be doing a deep dive into looking at how citizenship was looked at, challenged, redefined as in relationship to the Civil War, and in this specific bullet as part of the question, looking at the 14th Amendment. So let's listen to Kelly Carter Jackson, who's a professor at Wellesley, and this is an interview from Lincoln's Dilemma, which was a 3-part documentary on Apple TV that we produced. I'm going to go to hers, and here we go.
Citizenship was so important to the abolitionist movement. When you think about the fact that free Northerners are not really free because they don't have citizenship. When Frederick Douglass tries to travel outside of the country, he's going to Europe, and he tries to come back in the country, and they're like, oh, your passport's not valid, you're not a citizen. And he's like, what do you mean I'm not a citizen? But the Dred Scott case, the Supreme Court decision, Dred Scott 1857, basically said that Black people had no rights, which white men were bound to respect, and that Black people were not citizens, and so that they couldn't sue and they couldn't testify and they couldn't serve on juries. So citizenship was essential to establishing Black humanity in the United States. Rights have to be protected. And so in order to claim citizenship, what does that entail? Well, it entails protection. It entails protection from the state. It ensures that, you know, your vote will count. Your harm that's committed against you will be held accountable. It means that assets that you own or land that you own will be protected. So there's so much about citizenship and rights that go hand in hand that Black people can't really experience freedom until that is secured by the federal government, their state governments, and their local governments as well. Free Black people were not citizens. Not until you get the 14th Amendment do you get citizenship for Black Americans. So even though you were born in this country, you could live.
She goes on, as you say, she goes on to talk a little bit more about the role of mobility and movement and how the relationship between mobility and citizenship is such a big part of something that we often take for granted as citizens. And so that is a really fascinating way for students to enter into understanding the importance and responsibilities of citizenship. And so I'm going to come back to those questions again. I don't know if any new connections came up from Professor Carter Jackson, but if there are, please do share. And Michael, if you could help me out, if anybody puts something in chat, a connection, a relationship, or any new questions that arose, please share. Otherwise, we're going to move on to women's suffrage in a minute.
I am struck by the way that this complements the original sources. You know, as a scholar, I'm so, I consider those primary sources to be, you know, essential to encounter. What I love about what these two women have brought to our attention is that in order to really understand the implications of, and perhaps the weaknesses in, these primary sources, we need to hear the stories of the people who are living in the wake of the different laws or the different amendments and so on, and it keeps what it just says that this experiment, this of democracy, this experiment of the United States, is an organic, living thing that is not yet done, and I love that. And so our students can enter into the ongoing life. They're a part of it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, so well said. Thank you. I'm so glad this clip connected with you in that way, that it's the stories that are companions to the documents that make it come alive. And I really appreciate the way you frame that. Thank you for sharing that. And we're just getting started. All right, let's keep going if that's okay with everybody.
Oh.
Great. So here we are at another question from the national finals. But again, so, I mean, yes, it's a question for this competition, but this is really about the right to vote, right? And how does the right to vote, and teens are so like into this, like, oh, you know, I'm 17, I don't, whatever, I can't do this until I vote. And as they get more engaged in that and they start to feel empowered on that, the history of the right to vote is a really, of course, fascinating part of understanding that. But as we know, the 19th Amendment with the Constitution is one of the amendments that happened. And here's a short clip from a film called The Soul of America that came out during COVID. I can't remember exactly. And we did lessons for it, but it looks at 4 case studies. One of which is suffrage. And here's a clip from this that I think is a minute-long clip. It's actually going to be a social post next week to celebrate Women's History Month. So let me get this going for you here. And some of you might know Lisa Tetral. I know she does a lot with the center as well, but she's a women's historian and she's just a fantastic spokesperson. So let me share with you this.
The thing that we can't forget is that while this suffrage story is unfolding, there is simultaneously a suppression of democracy going on in the United States. During that massive 1913 suffrage parade, The great Ida B. Wells, journalist, anti-lynching crusader, feminist activist, comes in with her Illinois delegation from Chicago. But they're in DC, which is a southern city, and there are going to be southern congresspeople watching this. And so Alice Paul says, no, we can't have you march with white women. And that's one example of the ways in which Alice Paul was willing to embrace and perpetuate racism in this. And I think the suffrage movement reminds us that we really have to be thinking constantly about the ways in which justice movements can do damage while they're also doing good. And I think that's a caution to us today because we're no different.
Any reactions to this clip about women's suffrage, or does anybody teach that in their classes at any time? I love Ida B. Wells. I love teaching Ida B. Wells, and this is a very easy and quick way to bring her into the relationship. Again, layering the stories of that.
I don't want to take that. Sorry.
No, please.
No, I was going to say, I don't want to take a lot of space, but if no one else is going to say that they teach this or talk about it,
No,
I do.
please.
In fact, I'm down the street from Ida B. Wells Drive, right? Like I'm teaching this. My school is like literally. And when I do a unit on the power of activism, students are developing their own service learning project, which is basically just a project that they're designing, not one that they're necessarily intending to do. And one part of that is to locate their civic problem that they're going to work on in the context of a social movement. And so this year I'm actually thinking about doing it all through Asian American activism. But in the past, I've always modeled it by showing, placing the issue of modern women's issues within the context of the suffrage movement. And so I do this. And talking about those issues, like how people made decisions, right, that may have alienated certain elements of the movement. Like that's one of the things that we would focus on in class.
Yeah, and in social movements, this idea of who speaks on behalf of what issues is still very current. So past present connections is really strong there. Thank you for sharing that.
And I did get your question in the chat also, Kathleen. We can handle this after the fact, but she's teaching it herself, the documentary, Fran, but is asking about permissions. So that's a question I can't answer, but maybe
permission to use the documentary.
The full documentary.
Oh yeah. So on our website, this is a good usage question. So if you go to our website, each of the films are listed either under films or stories or under learning. You click on the film, it'll say request an education screening. You click on that, I get an email, I send you a link. It's that easy. We just have to have that's considered education permission. So we'll give you a link and we can, give it.
Can I give it to a student? Because my concern is when kids are absent, it's hard to catch them up on the film.
Yeah.
Right?
So what we can do is we can give you like a window of like 3 months or a month, whatever you need. And then the students can use that same link. Yes, it's a free link. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. Great. Good question. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. So with a few minutes left, I'm going to make the executive decision. And maybe
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide. We have the Eighth Amendment and cruel and unusual punishment, or polarization. I think I'm going to go into polarization, given where we are in the world. But those of you who don't know True Justice, Brian Stevenson's Fight for Equality, this is a tremendous documentary, and we have really wonderful resources from the Equal Justice Initiative that we worked on that really looks at this clip in particular looks at 3 Supreme Court cases in the Eighth Amendment around juveniles and cruel and unusual punishment of life sentences for juveniles. So it's a really great documentary, but that's not just what this is about. It's really about representation of those who have been unfairly convicted and what has happened for that. So this is a great clip to use, and we're recording this, and so when you get that, I'm happy to share this at any time for any of you that are here, but know that that's there. Again, too many resources. We already shared that one. Oh, I'm going the wrong direction. I'm going to end with another clip, since the suffrage one was of interest. This one looks at another congressional hearing question that has to do with political polarization today and how do we reduce it. Whether or not you're part of the We the People competition, I think this is in the air, and the idea of how do we mend these divides and the gulf. I think this could be an interesting clip for us to end with, and leave us with something to think about. So let me get this one up, and here we go.
So we're living in an era of politics as entertainment, politics as an unfolding and insistent drama. And so the question I get asked the most is, has it ever been like this? Second question is, how do we get out of this? And so what I'd like to take our few minutes this afternoon is to talk about some moments that I think should give us a sense of proportion about the questions of the present time. Because we have been here before. If we had been here 101 years ago today, what would have been going on? Woodrow Wilson would be President of the United States. We would be fighting the First World War, with a huge part of the country wondering why our boys were going to fight for nations about whom we knew so little. In 1919, 1920, you had a prevalent fear that radical socialist communists were taking the country away. Woodrow Wilson cracked down on civil dissent and civil liberties. A. Mitchell Palmer, the Attorney General, launches a number of raids on suspected dissidents. President Wilson closes down 400 newspapers. Immigration was at an extraordinary high. It didn't really stop until the 1924 immigration legislation, which put quotas on immigration from different countries. There was white anxiety about cultural identity, about economic opportunity, that inspired the rebirth of the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s. 1925 and 26, 50,000 Klansmen marched down Pennsylvania Avenue in what was a remarkable but not stunning public display. It was a big, broad-based, racist army, and what they wanted to do was make America great again. The governor of Georgia announced that he wanted to build a wall of steel as high as heaven to keep immigrants out. As Mark Twain once said, history may not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. Nativism, xenophobia, racism, sexism, isolationism are perennial American forces. They ebb and they flow. The story of race and fear and anxiety and violence is inextricably intertwined with the story of the country. It's not that the soul of a country has been captured by a particular group at a particular time. The soul of the country is, in fact, this essence, which is not all good or all bad. You have your better angels fighting against your worst impulses. And that has a religious component, certainly. It's also, though, a matter of historical observation. Our history is shaped by the extent to which those better angels or those worst instincts win out in a given period of time. It was true in the 1760s. It was true in the 1860s. It was true in the 1960s, and it's true today.
So I end at least our section, my section, thanking you for the opportunity to share some of our resources. Here is our website. There is my email. There is me with my daughter and husband at the We the People competition last week. A little shout out to the competition and the amazing work that this Center for Civic Education does. And we're just honored. Thank you for staying in there a few more minutes after our scheduled time. But I hope we can start to support any of your work through our storytelling, our interviews, and our resources. So I'll turn it back over to you, Michael.
Well, thanks, Fran. That was great, and again, thank you all for spending time here. We're happy to hang on after and answer any questions you may have technically about resources, We the People, Project Citizen, what the center does. But we thank you for your time here today, and hopefully this helped give you a good sense of how you can activate storytelling in your classroom or community, and have it used as a way to help get at deeper constitutional questions that are all around us, and prepare us for our life as community members and citizens. So
Michael,
thank you very much.
yeah. Can I answer these? There's 3 questions that I just saw in the
Yes.
chat. Are we allowed to link the interview clips to a public site for student use? All of our interviews are publicly available, so students can use them and cite them as public domain, or not public domain, public media. Great that you submit. I can, Kathleen, I'll speak to you on the offline about that. No problem. I can extend it for much longer than that. And can you share examples of student work that integrate primary sources with some of the documentary resources that I showcased? I think that's the next webinar. But yes, we can figure out how to do that. And thank you for putting the crosswalk in. I think as you cite, again, documentary films, interviews are primary sources that can be cited as such. And so they are first person voices. Again, some of them are secondary if you're looking at some of the footage and other images and media that are included in the documentary film. But certainly the interviews are cited all the time. We work with journalists, we work with folks all across media to use our interviews. And we have just about 230 on our website, and we have over 800 in our archive that we're currently digitizing. But I'm happy to share them. Again, all the transcripts are available for everything that we have online. So sorry, I just didn't want to do. I hate when there's a webinar with a question and you don't get your question.
No,
answered.
that's great.
Great.
That's great. Yeah, no, I think I think now that we had gotten most of the questions in the chat, but anyone feel free, we could be here for another half hour if you want to ask any questions. You can come off mute, and ask any questions you might have.
Michael, I just wanted to thank Fran. Fran, I work with Dr. Ed Ayers, and he's one of the subjects of one of your interviews.
Yes,
for
he is.
the Abraham Lincoln episode.
Yes,
And
he
so
is.
we have shared that clip very widely with the learning resources and the outreach that we do. And, you know, I think that originally aired as part of an Apple TV Plus
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And most schools don't have access to HBO or Max or Apple TV Plus. In fact, they get in trouble for using that. And so I just wanted to say to you how important it is for teachers to have access to those resources. So it's not just the people that can afford those subscriptions for those streaming.
Absolutely. Yes, everything that we have, we can give you education license for. So I'm really, and please, he's a wonderful interview. What a great scholar that you work with.
I am very lucky.
Yes, you are. Great.
So I just want to acknowledge that I'm actually a student and teacher of world religions, so not exactly civics. But in that last clip, I was impacted by the idea of the competition between the sides, you know, and who wins and so on. And, you know, in the wisdom traditions across the globe and across time, one of the things that we keep being encouraged to consider is that all of these things we see going on out there are the result of what's going on in here. And I wonder if in our work with students in civics, in history, as well as in religious studies, trying to find the connection between what we're observing and studying out there in the world, in the country, you know, in the state, wherever it happens to be. How does that relate to what's going on in here? And maybe even if that's a little too close, bringing it to what's happening in the families, what's happening in your friend groups. Where do you see the tensions that are exploding that seem to be creating such conflict in Washington, D.C., in Kyiv? Where are we maybe experiencing something related in our own selves? And what might we do to address those more close to home type issues? So it's just another perspective that I think is really, really critical so that we don't continue this sense of, all right, who's winning this decade and who's going to win next decade and so on. So just something that came up for me, especially watching that last clip.
And Tom, what's interesting is the idea of meaning and purpose in how you participate or how you engage in your community, your family is a through line through so many of the stories that we do. And also sometimes with student work, when you hear somebody else's story talk about these issues that you're talking about, that can sometimes be the spark that opens up a conversation, because they're not necessarily having to talk about themselves, but let me talk about that person talking about that. But in fact, what they're sharing is something that's deeply personal, or at least a connection that they're making. But for adolescents, it's so much easier to have that emotional distance and use somebody else's. So we find that really an effective bridge when you're trying to deal with difficult issues of race or sexism or some of these things that some of these clips. And I guess one precursor that I didn't, or one disclaimer that I had, it's the clips that we shared all were really difficult topics in American history. A lot of our films are like that, but some of them aren't. Some of them are different. They're not the heaviness. And I think we need to be celebrating as much as interrogating and looking at the difficult moments to come together. So I just wanted to make sure that it's not all of the hardest parts of our history that we have created stories on, and many of the people balance that out. So thank you for sharing that, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Fran.
Yeah, I will say that it's kind of similar to something came up with at a different meeting I had earlier this week, where someone was asking about the two sides of that come out in a simulated congressional hearing, We the People, and like my take on that back was that actually We the People is really well constructed to bring out multiplicity of sides, even multitudes within yourself, like that you're able to give points and counterpoints for different perspectives, because there are obviously 6 billion different perspectives in the world, as many perspectives as there are people. So we all have these different bodies of knowledge and inclinations within us. And I always thought that We the People actually does a really great job of help bringing that out. For each panelist is not just offering two sides of any one question, which was all good constitutional questions can provoke to, but the tell of a really great team is being able to bring up multiplicity and being able to speak to all of that. And I think that's what comes through with a personal interview in some of these media resources too.
Yeah.
Yeah, always great areas everywhere. That is the main learning takeaway from We the People, I think, is everything is nuanced.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, what a wonderful conversation. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for this time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
All right.
Any other questions? Comments, observations? Great. Well, thank you, Fran. It really do. I mean, you never round of applause to Fran
Everybody,
and to Life Stories, to all the work they do, and for your willingness and passion to be really wanting to engage with the center and provide this kind of offering. Ideally, it was for We the People teachers, but I thought is this a good idea to bring to anyone that's dealing with civic education or students in any way. I think all these components can be pulled into different types of teaching practices. So thank you, Fran.
You continued, you bet. Let's go change the world.
Yeah.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Good night.